Have you ever walked into someone's home and felt an instant sense of peace? Not because the house was grand or filled with expensive things, but because the space itself seemed to breathe. Every corner felt calm. Every surface felt light. And you couldn't quite explain it, but the home itself seemed to hold you like a warm embrace. I once had that experience when I visited an elderly Japanese woman named Noriko. She lives not in Japan anymore, but in the quiet suburbs of America. At 80 years old, she lives alone. And yet her home feels as serene as a temple, as welcoming as a tea house, and as uncluttered as a clear sky after rain. What fascinated me most was this. She isn't strong anymore. Her knees ache, her hands are slow, and she doesn't have anyone helping her every day. And yet, her home never looks messy, not even for a moment. I wondered, how could this be? After all, most of us spend our lives wrestling with clutter. We clean one day, and 2 days later, the mess has returned. We buy bins, shelves, and organizers, but somehow the chaos always sneaks back in. But Noriko seemed to live with an ease I had never known. So I asked her about her habits, and slowly she revealed them. They weren't complicated and they weren't expensive. They were quiet, almost invisible ways of living. 9 Japanese secrets that, when practiced daily, keep a house light, uncluttered, and always ready for life. Today, I want to share those 9 secrets with you, because they are not just Japanese, they are human. They are about creating a home where you can breathe, where aging doesn't mean losing control, and where simplicity becomes your greatest comfort. And the beauty of these secrets is this: you don't need to change your entire life to start. You only need to choose one small action, one gentle shift, and repeat it. Day by day, your home will begin to reflect that same quiet calm that I felt in Noriko's home. So, if you've ever wished for a home that stays neat without endless effort, if you've ever wanted to wake up and feel peace instead of clutter, then let's begin together. Because what I'm about to share with you are not rules, they are not chores. They are gentle invitations to live differently. Let's start with the first secret. Every item has a home. When I first stepped into Noriko's home, I felt a quiet surprise. It wasn't a large house. In fact, it was modest. A small living room, a narrow kitchen, 2 bedrooms with little more than the essentials. But the moment I walked in, I noticed something unusual. Nothing was wandering, nothing looked abandoned. The television remote sat neatly at the center of the coffee table, not tucked between cushions or hiding under yesterday's newspaper. A folded blanket rested gracefully at the edge of the sofa, waiting for the cool evening. Her slippers were placed side by side at the entrance, their tips pointing toward the door as if ready to greet the next step. Even the towel in the bathroom wasn't just hanging. It was folded, straight, and centered on the bar. There was no chaos, no confusion. Every item seemed to know where it belonged. I asked her, half joking, "Do you spend all your time arranging things like this?" After all, that's what I had always imagined tidy people did, constantly cleaning, constantly adjusting, endlessly chasing perfection. Noriko smiled, shook her head softly, and said something that stayed with me. "I don't tidy. I just bring everything back home." At first, I thought she was being poetic, but the more I watched, the more I understood. She wasn't fighting mess with endless cleaning sessions. She was preventing it before it even began. Her philosophy was simple: just like people, things need a home. A cup has its place. Keys have their place. A book, a scarf, a pair of glasses. Each one has a spot it returns to after use. And if you always respect that, clutter never forms in the first place. It made me think about my own home. I realized how often I left a mug on the windowsill, telling myself I'd put it away later. How often I tossed my coat over a chair instead of hanging it in the closet. How often I searched for my keys only to discover them in yesterday's jacket pocket or on the kitchen counter where I had rushed in and dropped them. It wasn't that I didn't try to be tidy. It was that I allowed things to wander. And the more things wandered, the more chaotic the house and my mind became. Noriko had simply trained herself over the years never to let that cycle start. She didn't call it decluttering. She didn't call it organization. To her, it was just respect for the object, for her home, and for her own peace of mind. She told me, when every item has a place, the house is calm. When things wander, the house becomes restless. That sentence hit me deeply because I had always thought of clutter as just a visual mess. But she showed me it was also an emotional one. Every object out of place is like a small whisper in the back of your mind. Find me, fix me, don't forget me. And slowly, those whispers pile up until your house feels heavy and your thoughts feel crowded. Noriko didn't carry that burden. She had made peace with her belongings by giving each one a home. I decided to try it myself, starting with something small, the television remote. Normally, it could be in 3 or 4 different places in my living room. Sometimes under the couch cushion, sometimes on the armrest, sometimes on the coffee table. I wasted minutes every day just looking for it. But I chose one place, the right side of the coffee table, and made it its home. Every time I finished watching TV, I placed it back there. At first, I had to remind myself. But after a few days, it became automatic. And you know what? Something shifted in me. My mind felt lighter. My evenings felt calmer. I no longer had to search. I no longer had to be frustrated. That's when I realized what Noriko meant. Organization isn't about cleaning harder. It's about preventing disorder before it starts. So let me invite you to try this first Japanese secret. Choose one object today. Maybe your keys, maybe the remote, maybe your glasses. Decide it's home, and every time you use it, return it there. It seems so small, but over time, this one habit will ripple through your entire home. Because when every item has a home, your house isn't just neat. It becomes a place of calm. And more importantly, so do you. Secret 2. If it takes 1 minute, do it now. As we sat together in her living room, sipping green tea from small porcelain cups, I watched Noriko move with a quiet rhythm. She stood up to refill the teapot, her steps slow but steady. A tiny drop of tea spilled on the wooden table. Without hesitation, she reached for a soft cloth and wiped it away. The movement was so natural, so automatic. It was as though her body already knew what to do. I smiled and asked, "Why not leave it for later? It's only a drop." She looked at me kindly and said something I will never forget. If something takes less than a minute, do it now. Later is how small things become heavy. That one sentence carried the weight of a lifetime of wisdom. Think about it. How many times have you seen a dirty dish in the sink and thought, I'll wash it later? How many times have you left yesterday's newspaper on the couch, promising to move it after dinner? Or ignored that single piece of laundry draped over a chair because you were too tired to put it away? Each of those moments feels harmless, but left undone, they collect. One cup becomes 3. One paper becomes a stack. One shirt becomes a pile. And before you know it, you're standing in the middle of a mess that feels overwhelming. Noriko never let that chain begin. She didn't allow her home to accumulate later. Her secret was immediate action. Quiet, gentle, almost invisible. A single dish washed, a table wiped, a towel folded. Each act finished in seconds, but together they prevented the avalanche of procrastination. She explains further, I don't like unfinished things in my home. When I complete something right away, it doesn't stay in my mind. My heart is lighter. And I realized that was the true key. It wasn't just about keeping her house clean. It was about keeping her mind uncluttered. Because every undone task we ignore doesn't disappear. It lingers inside us, whispering quietly, creating a pressure we can't always see, but always feel. I thought of my own nights, lying in bed, restless, with no reason I could name. But as she spoke, I remembered. The dishes still waiting in the sink, the coat still on the chair, the mail unopened on the counter. Those weren't just objects left undone, they were unfinished conversations my mind couldn't stop holding. Noriko slept peacefully, not because her house was perfect, but because nothing was waiting to be done. Each small task had been closed, and her day ended with a sense of completion. She didn't wait for motivation, she didn't argue with herself, she just did it, gently, without drama, and then let it go. The lesson struck me deeply. Sometimes a single minute of action saves us from hours of mental burden. So I began experimenting. The next time I set down a glass of water, I washed it immediately. When I noticed a speck of dust on the counter, I wiped it in that very moment. I didn't wait until cleaning day, and slowly I felt a change. My house wasn't just tidier, my mind was clearer. I no longer carried a mental list of things to do later. I no longer postponed peace. That's the second Japanese secret. If it takes less than a minute, do it now. Not as a rule, not as a chore, but as a gift to yourself. Because the real mess doesn't come from dirt or clutter, it comes from delay. And when you stop delaying, you stop carrying invisible weight. Your home stays lighter, and so does your heart. Secret 3. Keep less, but choose with care. When I followed Noriko into her kitchen, I expected to see cabinets filled with dishes, shelves stacked with containers, and a refrigerator crammed with leftovers, the way most of our kitchens often look. But what I found stopped me in my tracks. Her kitchen was simple, almost startlingly so. 1 pot, 1 pan, 2 bowls, 2 pairs of chopsticks, a few neatly stacked plates. The counters were clear, the shelves open, and the fridge held only the food she needed for the next few days. No half-empty bottles of sauce from last year, no wilted lettuce forgotten in the drawer, no clutter that whispered of neglect. I couldn't help but ask, why so little? Isn't it more convenient to keep extra? She smiled gently, her hands resting on the edge of the counter. I used to keep more, she admitted, but I realized convenience can also be a burden. I keep what I truly use, nothing more, nothing less. Those words struck me like a bell, because if I was honest, my own home told a different story. I thought of the juicer I had bought with good intentions, used once and tucked into a cupboard. The blender I held onto even though I preferred a simpler tool. The stack of mismatched dishes I never liked but kept because they were gifts. The pantry lined with cans and jars I hadn't touched in years, just in case. Each of those things seemed harmless on its own, but together they filled my cabinets, weighed on my shelves, and cluttered not just my home, but my spirit. Noriko didn't carry that burden. She had learned to live with enough. Not less, not deprivation, simply enough. She explained, when we keep too much, we aren't keeping things. We are keeping the past. We are keeping guilt. We are keeping fear. And all of that makes the home heavy. I thought about that carefully. How many things in my house were there not because I loved them, not because I needed them, but because I was afraid of letting them go, afraid I'd waste money, afraid I'd regret it, afraid of insulting the person who gave it to me. But Noriko had freed herself from that fear. She chose only what served her daily life, the pot she cooked with, the chopsticks she used every meal, the small fridge filled with fresh food she actually enjoyed. Everything she owned had purpose. Nothing sat there silently accusing her of neglect. I asked if she ever missed the things she let go of. She shook her head softly. When you live with less, you see what truly matters, and you see how little you actually needed in the first place. That evening, back in my own home, I opened my cupboards with new eyes. I didn't throw everything away, but I began to ask questions. Do I use this? Does it make my life easier? Does it bring me peace? Or am I just keeping it because I feel guilty to let it go? I started small, an old set of cups I never liked, a stack of expired spices, a cracked bowl. Each time I let something go, I felt my kitchen breathe easier, and strangely, so did I. It wasn't about living like a monk or stripping my life bare. It was about choosing with care, about keeping what I actually use and releasing what no longer serves me. Noriko had shown me that a home with fewer items doesn't feel empty. It feels lighter, brighter, freer. And that's the third Japanese secret. Keep less, but choose wisely. Not because less is trendy, not because minimalism is fashionable, but because peace doesn't come from owning more. It comes from cherishing what is truly enough. Secret 4. 5 minutes before bed. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky outside her window turned shades of amber and violet, I prepared to say goodbye to Noriko. We had shared tea, small stories, and laughter that seemed to soften the air. I gathered my things, but she gently raised her hand and said, "Please wait a moment." I watched as she moved into the kitchen. At first I thought she was preparing something more, but no, she was tidying. Not a big cleaning session, not a deep scrub, just a quiet 5 minutes. She washed the 2 cups we had used. She wiped the table where we had rested the teapot. She straightened the 2 chairs we had sat in. She placed the snacks back into the cupboard. Then she stood still for a moment, looking around, and nodded to herself. When she returned, she smiled warmly. Now my day is complete. It struck me. She wasn't ending her day with television blaring or with a half-done chore left for tomorrow. She was ending it with the ritual. 5 minutes of gentle order. She washed the 2 cups we had used. She wiped the table where we had rested the teapot. She straightened the 2 chairs we had sat in. She placed the snacks back into the cupboard. Then she stood still for a moment, looking around, and nodded to herself. When she returned, she smiled warmly. Now my day is complete. It struck me that she wasn't ending her day with television blaring or with a half-done chore left for tomorrow. She was ending it with the ritual. 5 minutes of gentle order. It's like saying goodbye to today. And when I wake up, tomorrow is already waiting for me, ready and calm. I tried this myself. The first night, I chose just 3 tasks: wipe the counter, wash a single cup, and fold the blanket on the sofa. It took less than 5 minutes, but the next morning, I woke up to something different. I walked into the kitchen, and instead of being met by chaos, I was met by order, by peace, by the quiet feeling that I was still in control of my life. It wasn't just about cleanliness, it was about rhythm, about ending the day with closure instead of carrying unfinished things into tomorrow. As seniors, we often say, "I'm too tired to clean." But 5 minutes? 5 minutes is something all of us can do. 5 minutes to put one dish away. 5 minutes to fold a towel. 5 minutes to straighten the room where we sat. Those small things don't demand strength, but they give us something powerful in return: dignity, calm, and the feeling of starting fresh each day. So that's the 4th Japanese secret. Take 5 minutes before bed to restore order. Not to make the house perfect, not to shine every corner, but to honor the ends of the day and prepare for the beginning of the next. And if you try it, you may discover what I did, that you don't just wake up to a cleaner home, you wake up with a clearer mind. Secret 5. Define each space clearly. As I walked through Noriko's home, another detail caught my attention. It wasn't just that her home was tidy, it was that every space seemed to know exactly what it was for. The dining table, for example, held nothing but a simple cloth and 2 neatly placed mats. No piles of mail, no phones charging in the corner, no random notebooks left open from yesterday. It was a place for meals and nothing else. The living room had a small armchair in one corner with a tea table beside it. On the table sat a single book she was reading and a small coaster for her cup. That was her reading corner. It wasn't invaded by laundry, paperwork, or grocery bags. Even her bedroom was precise. The bed was made. The nightstand had only what was essential: a lamp, a clock, and a glass of water. No clutter, no distractions, no mixing of tasks. I asked her why she didn't add more things: a second chair for guests, a shelf near the table for extra storage, a television in her bedroom. She shook her head gently and said, "Every space has a purpose. When you mix purposes, the home becomes restless. When you respect the purpose, the home becomes peaceful." Her words lingered in me, because when I thought about my own home, I realized how much I blurred the lines. I ate dinner on the sofa while watching TV. I piled bills and letters on the dining table. I used the kitchen counter as a desk for my laptop. And then I complained that my home felt too small. But maybe the problem wasn't space. Maybe it was the way I confused the spaces I had. Noriko never blurred those lines. Eating was eating. Reading was reading. Resting was resting. Each space invited her to do one thing with presence, and when she left that space, it stayed clean, uncluttered, and ready for the next time. She explained, "Our bodies remember. When you eat only at the table, the body knows it is time to eat. When you rest only in bed, the body knows it is time to sleep. When you mix them, you confuse not just the house, you confuse yourself." I thought of my friends who complained of insomnia, who said they couldn't fall asleep easily. Many of them admitted they worked from their beds, scrolled through their phones under the covers, or even ate meals propped up against pillows. They had unknowingly turned the bed, a place meant for rest, into a place of activity. No wonder their bodies didn't relax. I began experimenting with this lesson. I cleared the mail from the dining table and made a small space near the door for it instead. I stopped working on the kitchen counter and returned it to its true purpose: preparing food.
I began eating only at the table, not while distracted in the living room. It felt strange at first, like retraining a habit I didn't know I had. But slowly, I noticed something powerful. When spaces were used only for their rightful purpose, I felt calmer. My meals were calmer. My work was clearer. My rest was deeper. And my home stayed tidier without effort, because clutter simply didn't have a chance to creep in. So that's the fifth Japanese secret. Give each space a clear purpose and honor that purpose. Your dining table is for meals, not for piles. Your sofa is for rest, not for laundry. Your bed is for sleep, not for work. When you respect those boundaries, your home becomes a place of clarity. And the most beautiful part, when the home is clear, the mind becomes clear too.
Secret 6. Prepare for tomorrow tonight. When evening came, I noticed something unusual about the way Noriko ended her day. She didn't simply drift into bed. She had a quiet ritual, a small but powerful habit that set the tone for the next morning. She began by picking out her clothes for the following day. Not a whole outfit with accessories, just the essentials: a blouse, a cardigan, and a pair of slacks neatly folded and placed on a chair. Next to them, she set a small handkerchief, something she said she never left the house without. Then she moved to the kitchen. She didn't cook or clean deeply. Instead, she gave the counters a quick wipe, made sure the sink was empty, and arranged a fresh glass of water beside her bed. Finally, she checked the locks on the doors and dimmed the lights. All of this took less than 10 minutes, yet it transformed the house. It was as if she was gently closing the chapter of today and preparing a soft landing for tomorrow. I asked her why she went through this routine every night. She smiled and said, "Morning is the most fragile time of day. If I prepare at night, I clear the path for myself. Tomorrow greets me with calm instead of confusion." Her words made me pause, because when I thought about my own mornings, I realized how often they began with chaos. I would rush to find something to wear, shuffle through a messy kitchen, stumble over yesterday's clutter, and leave the house already tense. The tone of the entire day was set by that morning storm. But Noriko's mornings were different. Because she had already prepared the path the night before, her days began like water, flowing smoothly over stones. This wasn't about doing more work, it was about removing friction. Instead of waking up to a dozen little decisions, what will I wear? Where are my keys? Did I wash the dishes? She had already answered those questions the night before, and so she preserved her energy for the things that truly mattered. I tried this myself. At first, just something small, setting out a glass of water and folding a shirt for the morning. To my surprise, I felt a wave of relief. When I woke, I didn't have to think. The day was already welcoming me. Then I added more, clearing the sink, placing my bag by the door, checking that the living room was in order. And slowly, I began to feel a shift. My mornings no longer started with tension. They started with ease. That's when I understood. Preparing for tomorrow tonight is not a chore. It's an act of kindness toward yourself. A way of saying, I've taken care of you. Rest easy now. Tomorrow will be gentle. So that's the sixth Japanese secret. Before you go to bed, prepare for tomorrow. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet ones. A folded shirt, a clean sink, a glass of water, a checked door. These tiny preparations remove 100 little frictions before they even appear. And when you wake, you don't face clutter, you face clarity. And clarity is the best way to begin any new day. Secret 7. Gratitude for every item. After our final cup of tea together, I watched as Noriko stood at the sink. She washed her cup gently, dried it with a soft cloth, and placed it back on the shelf. But before she let it go, she paused. She pressed her palms together for a moment, closed her eyes lightly, and whispered something under her breath. Curious, I asked, "What are you doing?" She looked at me with a calm smile and said, "I'm thanking the cup for serving me today." At first, I didn't know how to respond. Thanking a cup? It seemed unusual, almost strange. But as I watched her do it again with the teapot and the cloth, I realized it wasn't about the objects themselves, it was about her relationship with them. Noriko lived with gratitude not just for people, but for things. For every item that made her life a little easier. For the plate that held her meal, the slippers that warmed her feet, the pen that helped her write. None of these objects were expensive or grand, but each one had a role in her daily life, and she honored that role. She explained, "When I was young, we had very little. We learned to appreciate what we had. That's why I don't keep too much. I don't need to. What I have, I care for. What I care for, I keep." Her words carried a weight I could feel in my chest. I thought of my own home, the piles of things I had collected over the years, gifts I didn't use but felt guilty throwing away, clothes I didn't wear but kept just in case, knickknacks I had bought in moments of impulse only to tuck away into boxes. And yet, despite owning so much, I had never truly appreciated a single item. I had never paused to thank the glass that held my water or the chair that carried me through countless meals. To me, things were disposable, interchangeable, and because of that, they piled up without meaning, without care, until they became clutter. But in Noriko's home, every item mattered. Every item had dignity. And because she treated her possessions with gratitude, she kept only what she loved and used. There was no waste, no guilt, no hoarding. Her home wasn't just tidy. It felt alive, cared for, almost sacred. I began trying this in small ways. The first night, I thanked my teacup before putting it down. The next morning, I thanked my shoes as I set them neatly by the door. At first, it felt awkward, but soon something changed. I found myself handling my things more gently, storing them with more care, and letting go of what I didn't truly value. Gratitude became a filter. If I couldn't be thankful for something, perhaps it didn't belong in my home at all. And so I learned the 7th Japanese secret. Be grateful for every item in your home. Not because the object needs it, but because you do. Gratitude turns clutter into care. It transforms a house full of random things into a home full of cherished companions. And when you live with gratitude for what you have, you no longer feel the urge to fill your space with more. What you already own feels enough. That is why Noriko's home, though small, never felt poor. Why her shelves, though simple, never felt empty. And why her life, though modest, felt so profoundly rich. Secret 8. The power of empty space. As I lingered in Noriko's home, I noticed something that at first felt almost unsettling. There were empty spaces, a bare shelf with nothing on it, a low table that held no centerpiece, no magazines, no clutter of daily life, a corner in the living room that was simply empty. My instinct was to think something was missing. I even wondered if she hadn't finished decorating. But then I realized, no, this emptiness was intentional. When I asked her about it, she said softly, "Empty space is not wasted space. It is breathing room for the heart." Her words sunk into me like water into dry soil. Because in my own home,
Every shelf was crammed, every counter lined with something. I thought I was using space well, but what I was really doing was filling every silence, covering every gap, as if emptiness itself was something to be ashamed of. But in Noriko's home, empty spaces felt like a gentle breath. They gave the room clarity, allowed the light to move freely, and created a sense of peace that no piece of furniture could buy. She told me, when there is space, you see more clearly the things you truly love. They are not buried, they are honored. I realized she was right. A single vase on an empty shelf draws the eye more than a dozen decorations competing for attention. A clear table invites gathering and conversation, while a cluttered one pushes people away. Empty space isn't a lack, it's a gift. So that night, I went home and looked around my living room. Every surface was covered. Books stacked high, knickknacks from vacations, papers waiting to be filed. It was suffocating. So I chose one small area, the coffee table. I cleared it completely, leaving only a small candle. At first, the emptiness looked strange, but after a while, it began to feel soothing. When I sat down, my eyes rested, my mind quieted, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. That was when I finally understood. We don't always need more to feel at home. Sometimes we need less. Sometimes we need the courage to let emptiness exist, not as a gap to be filled, but as a pause that makes everything else shine. So that's the 8th Japanese secret. Honor the power of empty space. Don't rush to fill every corner. Leave a shelf bare. Keep a table clear. Let a wall stand with nothing on it. These empty spaces will not make your home feel lonely. They will make it feel alive. And in that emptiness, you may discover a calm that has been waiting for you all along.
Secret 9. Clean with the seasons, not just the days. One afternoon, as the breeze carried the scent of autumn through her open window, Noriko told me about a tradition from her childhood in Kyoto. It was called Osoji, the Great Cleaning. In Japan, families don't just clean when things look dirty. They reset their homes with the rhythm of the seasons. 4 times a year, when the weather shifts, they take it as a cue to refresh the home. In winter, windows are polished to catch the pale sun. In spring, closets are cleared to make space for lighter clothes. In summer, futons are aired outside so they smell of sunshine. In autumn, kitchens are emptied and scrubbed, preparing for the long months indoors. It's not just cleaning, Noriko explained. It is a way of greeting the new season. Hearing her, I realized how different that felt from the way I had always approached housework. For me, cleaning was often a reaction. I waited until things looked messy, until the closets groaned, until the fridge smelled, until the clutter grew so loud I couldn't ignore it. Then I would rush, stressed, to catch up. But Noriko's way was not reactive. It was rhythmic. Her home was never allowed to reach the point of chaos because each season gave her an opportunity to reset. I asked if it was tiring to do this 4 times a year. She shook her head and smiled. No, because each time I also let go of the past season. I don't carry it forward, I release it. And it struck me, she wasn't just cleaning, she was practicing renewal. I thought of my own life. The old sweaters I never wore but still kept every spring. The beach towels stuffed in the closet even after years of never being used. The kitchen drawer filled with gadgets I had bought in some forgotten summer. These weren't just objects. They were remnants of seasons long gone. Seasons I refused to release. No wonder my home felt heavy. I was carrying the weight of every year I had lived, stacked into boxes and drawers. So, I tried her method. At the change of season, I began with something simple: opening every window, letting in the air, and wiping the frames. Then, I'd check the closet. Did I need this sweater for the months ahead? If not, I folded it away or passed it along. Did these sandals still serve me? If not, I released them. At first, it felt strange, like I was giving away pieces of myself. But then something shifted. My home began to feel in tune with time itself. Instead of fighting against the seasons, I was flowing with them. By the time the next season arrived, my house didn't feel stale or crowded. It felt ready. That's the 9th Japanese secret. Clean with the seasons, not just the days. Let the turning of the year be a natural reminder to reset, to refresh, to let go of what no longer serves you. Don't carry summer into winter. Don't drag yesterday into tomorrow. Each season is a chance to begin again, not only for your home, but for your heart. And maybe that's the deepest lesson of all. A tidy home is not about perfection. It's about renewal, about learning to let go gently so that life can keep moving fresh and light through every season. So, there you have it. 9 Japanese secrets to never have a messy house. Give every item a home. If it takes 1 minute, do it now. Keep less, but choose with care. Take 5 minutes before bed. Define each space clearly. Prepare for tomorrow, tonight. Be grateful for every item. Honor the power of empty space. Clean with the seasons, not just the days. When I first stepped into Noriko's little home, I thought I was just visiting an elderly woman in the suburbs. But what she showed me was something far greater, that peace doesn't come from wealth or from endless energy or from buying the latest cleaning tools. Peace comes from small, intentional habits repeated daily. Her home wasn't perfect. It was old, the furniture simple, the walls showing their age. And yet, it felt more alive and more welcoming than many grand homes I've seen. Because she didn't live with clutter, she lived with clarity. She lived with gratitude. She lived with rhythm. And that is something all of us can do at any age. Maybe tonight you begin with one thing. Choose a place for your keys and always return them there. Or take 5 minutes before bed to straighten your space. Or simply pour yourself a glass of water and whisper thanks to the cup that held it. You don't need to change everything. You just need to begin. If this video has inspired you, I invite you to subscribe to our channel. Each week, we share simple, practical habits that can make your home and your life feel lighter and calmer. And if you found value here, a like or a comment helps us know you're walking this path with us. And before you go, take a look at the 2 videos waiting for you on the screen. On the left, you'll find 10 simple tricks seniors use to keep their homes always organized. On the right, Why Less is More, the secret to a peaceful home after 60. Click on whichever speaks to you, or watch both. I promise, each one will guide you gently toward the same goal of a home that feels like a soft place to land and a life that feels like your own again. Thank you for being here. Your presence is a true gift. Until next time, may your days be light, your spaces be calm, and your heart be at peace.